everyone, welcome back to my channel. I have been missing for like the entire week and I apologize for that. I don't really have a reason other than it's just been really busy around here with all of the birthdays and everything, and I just haven't taken the time to film. I did have a super fun birthday party on Saturday night and I meant to record that, but we were having so much fun that I just didn't even think to do it. But today I am going to talk to you a little bit about the number one question I get asked all the time with having 5 children. Well, the number 2 question. The number 1 question is, are you done? Are you having any more? But the number 2 question is, how did you get them to sleep? And I always tell people that there is no way I would have 5 children if they were not good sleepers. No way I could do it. I loved my sleep. I love to sleep in. I need my sleep. So getting my kids to sleep and sleep consistently was always like top on my priority list after they were born. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I do have 5 children. My oldest is 9 and my youngest is 13 months. And they're kind of just like stepped in between. So I have had 2 under 2 twice. My first 2 and then my last 2. So having 2 under 2, like sleep is important. If you don't have sleep while you have 2 under 2, it's just, you can't survive. You just can't. So I have definitely learned some tips and tricks along my years of parenting, and I'm just gonna share those with you today. I don't have it all figured out. I really don't have a whole lot of advice to give, but this is what has worked for me as a mom of 5 throughout all of these years. I'm currently coming to you right now during quiet time, which quiet time is the same time as nap time in my house, and I'll get more into that later on, but it's mandatory. It's not an option. Quiet time happens every day. So I am able to film this video right now because my 3 little ones that are at home are upstairs napping or in quiet time. So I guess like the best place to start is to just start at the beginning with like newborns. So I will say that I've had a few different experiences. My first son, I was 23 when I had him, and I didn't really know what I was doing, and he was mostly formula fed. So his sleeping was a little bit different than my next 4 babies who were exclusively breastfed. And there is a difference in that, and that's perfectly fine, and I'll kind of get into that as we go along. But I'm just gonna start with newborn stage because I feel like when you're a newborn mom, like you Google so many things related to newborns. Like newborns are beautiful and amazing and so snuggly, but they're also kind of like daunting, and you're like, they can't tell you what they need. They cry, you don't know why they're crying, and you're just trying to navigate it and figure it all out. So I'm trying to take myself back to those days and figure out like, what advice would I give when it comes to newborn sleep? And I will say with my first, like I said, I was 23. I didn't really have like a lot of examples growing up on how to like, I don't know, like raise kids. I always knew I wanted to be a mom, but I didn't know much. So I did read Baby Wise with my first, and I will say we did implement a lot of the practices. And I know that Baby Wise is a totally controversial book, and I don't have an opinion on that at all. All I can say is that I took bits and pieces from Baby Wise that I thought would work for my family, and I implemented them into our daily practice. And that's really all you can do. You can take advice from like everybody, and then you just gotta figure out like what works for you and what works for your current child, because what worked for my first didn't work for my second. So it was kind of figuring those things out. And then I figured out like the core things that I had to implement throughout parenting, no ifs, ands, or buts. And those are the things I'm gonna kind of talk about today. So the number 1 thing that I will recommend for newborns is the schedule of eat, wake, sleep. And you may be saying like, what is that? Like, what are you talking about? And I will say when I say newborns, I mean like 8 weeks and above. Newborns before 8 weeks, it's cluster feeding and it's snuggling and it's enjoying them and it's sleepless nights, and that's just to be expected because they are brand new babies. And you're exhausted, you just went through major birth, or you just got thrown into parenting, you may have just adopted a baby, and it's all new. So before we get into eat, wake, sleep, like, give yourself that grace. Give yourself that grace, because newborns are what they are. So all of these pieces of advice, I would say go for babies like past 8 weeks. Like kind of around that 2-month mark is when I would start implementing these practices. So basically what I would do is eat, wake, sleep. So with my oldest, who was formula fed, that looked like when he woke up from nap, he would get a bottle, and then we would do some playtime. And then on the first sign of crankiness, and I mean, like, you know, like when you're holding a baby, like a little newborn, and they're fine and they're snuggly, and then they're and they start to get upset, that's the first sign of crankiness. The first sign of crankiness, I would then lay them down. So they say to do eat, wake, sleep because they don't want the baby to get into the habit of falling asleep at the breast, which with my babies that I nursed, there were times when they fell asleep at the breast, for sure. But when I was really trying to get into like implementing nap times, consistent like sleep patterns, I tried not to let them do that. So the first sign of crankiness, what I would do with like my tiny baby, the babies that aren't rolling over yet, I would swaddle them. I love, love, love the Velcro swaddlers. Love them. And then I would hold them up, kiss them, snuggle them for a minute, and I would lay them down in whatever bed they were currently sleeping in. So for my 8-week-old, that might have been like the rock and play sleeper, or that might have been a bassinet. Just wherever you're putting them down for nighttime sleep, that's where you want to start putting them down for naps. And I always say that you need to start sleep training or getting them used to sleeping during the day first, because at nighttime you're exhausted. You're so tired, and everything's more emotional at nighttime. So if you can lay your baby down during the day when you're not so exhausted, and where there's a few things to kind of like keep you busy in the midst of trying to train them to sleep on their own, it's helpful. And I know I may get backlash for sleep training, and that is what it is. Everybody has their own opinion on that. I'm just giving you mine. I have 5 children. They're very well loved, but I did sleep train. So I don't have any advice on like co-sleeping, and I don't have any advice on attachment parenting. And that's fine if that's you. Just this video may not be for you. You know what I mean? And that's fine. Like, I don't do the mommy war thing. I don't do any of that. To each their own. This is just my advice. But anyways, so my 8-week-old, as soon as they would start to get fussy, I would lay them down, generally in like the rock and play. And I would turn on some white noise and get the room dark and kind of just like lay them down. And guys, like newborn babies, when you lay them down, they're gonna fuss because they don't want to be laid down. They want to be close to you, and that's fine. Trust me, my babies got snuggled all the time, like probably more than they should have been snuggled sometimes. But I was trying to put into place something that was healthy for them. Sleep is healthy. Sleep is needed. Learning how to put yourself to sleep on your own is just part of life, and it needs to be done. Babies need to sleep so that they're not overly tired, because when you have an overly tired baby, they are fussy and they're so upset and they can't get comfortable and they're screaming, and it's causing them, I feel like, a lot more harm than teaching them how to sleep consistently. So anyways, I would lay my 8-week-old baby down in the rock and play, white noise, pat them for a second, give a pacifier. I highly suggest pacifiers. I only have 1 out of my 5 kids that would not take a binky, and I hate it. He sucks his thumb. Not my favorite. I would much rather give a pacifier. But I would give a pacifier and I would walk out of the room. And this is where people get dicey. People would do this completely differently. Some people do not agree with this at all. But I would let my baby fuss. Not long. Not when you're first teaching them how to sleep. Never long. So maybe like 3 minutes, and then I would go in and I would put the passy back in their mouth, rub their belly, rub their little face, let them know that you're near, but don't pick them up. And then I would stay in there for a couple minutes till they calmed down. Then I would walk back out of the room again, 3 minutes, repeat, repeat, repeat until they fall asleep. And what you're doing is you're teaching them that you're there and that you love them, but that it's time to sleep, and this is where we're going to sleep, and this is what is good for you. So then once they took their little nap, I do suggest, like I said, I do suggest swaddling at this phase, because babies at that phase still have like the reflex where their arms will, and it wakes them up. So then their naps could be like cut like super short. Like they might just fall asleep and then jerk and they wake back up. So swaddling, keeping their arms down, totally helps at that phase. But when they would wake up, then I would nurse them or give a bottle, and then I would play with them for a little bit, and then first sign of crankiness, back down. And usually this is like they're not awake long at this phase. You may have like an hour and a half window where you're doing eat, wake, sleep. Repeat, 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 repeat. So that is like, don't expect them to stay awake a long period of time at this point. It's not gonna happen. Okay. So number 1, eat, wake, sleep. That's something you wanna start implementing around 8 weeks. You just wanna do it, trust me, it makes your life so much easier. The second thing that I did every single day is create a consistent afternoon nap time. Like I said, in my house, quiet time, nap time, they're a must. I feel like it's healthy. We have such a large family. We have 7 people at our house. I feel like that even for my 9-year-old now, it's still healthy to have like an hour and a half to 2 hour window when he's home or when my daughter's home from school, that they have like just some alone time, because we're around people all the time. I'm super extroverted, like crazy extroverted, and I love my quiet time. I like to just kind of be able to like sit and not really talk, not really have to like do things for just like an hour. Like it's so refreshing. So what I tried to do, like my goal once I had a new baby, was always to try to get them consistently napping at the same time that my older ones did. And that looked different based on ages. So like when I had a itty bitty newborn, what I would do is at nap time, I would swaddle them up and I would put them beside me on the couch, and they would just take a nap beside me. But they would stay asleep during that time period. And that was how I first like tried to establish this is nap time. They always got swaddled, they always got snuggled up to me, and they learned to like sleep during that period of time. And then once I really wanted to start crib training them for that nap time, I would say that nap time crib training probably happened more like 3 months, 4 months. Like once they started like rolling really is when I would like, I don't know, like when they're not easy enough to just snuggle up and put to sleep beside you. So I would start, same process, eat, wake, sleep, eat, wake, sleep, eat, wake, sleep, whatever. But for the afternoon nap time, I would make sure that I laid them down consistently at the same time every day. And if they woke up super fast from that nap, I would try to go back in and get them back to sleep. Because you really just want to establish that this is rest time. And they eventually like just naturally start doing that. And I will say that like young infants, they are gonna have more than 1 nap time a day. But their morning naps are generally much shorter. So like, for example, my 13-month-old right now, he still takes a morning nap, but instead of it being an hour to an hour and a half like it used to be, I have shortened it down to like 40 minutes. So he sleeps for 40 minutes. I go in, even if he's still sleeping, I wake him up, and then he stays awake until afternoon nap time. That way he will take a good afternoon nap of like 2 to 3 hours. So I think it's just kind of figuring out what works for your family with that. And then I will go ahead and take a step higher in terms of talking about the afternoon nap and talk about like what quiet time is for me. So quiet time is like when your kids transition out of napping, because that usually happens around like 3. If it starts happening before then, I will say like don't let it. Your kids still need to rest when they're like 2 years old. They still need it. If not, they are like terrible by the end of the day. Like there's nothing worse than like a toddler that's just losing their mind because they're so tired. So I will say that like they do go through phases. They do go through regressions, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But nap time, like really you should, I would suggest, in my personal preference, in my personal experience, I guess, is try to keep them napping until at least 3. But then like once they start transitioning out of naps, that's fine. that's when we implement quiet time in my house. So quiet time is still the same time as nap. It's usually 1 to 3, 1 to 3:30 in my house. Sometimes a little bit shorter with quiet time, but at least like 1 to 3. So what I do is I either get down like some fun toys for them to play with in their room, or I let them watch a show, like a movie on like a tablet. We have our tablets like where really like there's only like a couple things available for them to get in at a young age. So it's usually like they'll watch a movie or a show, or they'll play a toy, but they have to stay in their room. Like it's not a choice. You can come out to go pee, but you don't come out. You have quiet time because quiet time is needed. So my 4-year-old still does quiet time. He's not napping. He hasn't napped in years, but he has his quiet time, and he comes out of his quiet time and he's refreshed and he's ready for the next part of his day, and any bad attitudes that we might have had in the morning are usually gone because he's had some rest time. And then with my older kids, we still do quiet time, like I said. So I don't make them go to their room anymore, but I will say like, hey, I'm gonna go into like the front room and I'm gonna have my quiet time. You all have yours, you know? And they just find stuff to do. They have, like, sometimes they watch a show, sometimes they play a video game, sometimes they play a board game. It kind of just depends. I will say during the weekday, I don't have to worry about them being home because they're at school. So they're only home for quiet times on the weekend. So we also have a big basement downstairs, and sometimes I'll just be like, go downstairs and play. So it kind of just varies based on ages, but it's still implemented. It's practiced, and I suggest it, like, honestly, like, it can be done if it's important to you. Quiet time may not be important to you, and that's fine. This is just my personal experience of how I have 5 kids and stay sane, I guess. I need my quiet time. But like I said, I was gonna get back to sleep regressions. And I guess my biggest piece of advice when it comes to sleep regressions and sickness is to just be consistent. Sickness is one thing, because if your baby wakes up and they're throwing up, and I mean, that disrupts everything. But once they're better, you need to get back into a consistent schedule. So if they go to bed at 8 o'clock at night and they don't get up till like 7 a.m., if that's their norm, even when they're going through the sleep regressions or post-sickness, try to get them back to that. So try to keep them sleeping in their own bed, try to keep them like their normal routine in place as much as you can. I will say with sleep regressions, they're rough, but they're only rough for like a few days. And honestly, I may get slack for this, but the best thing that I've found with a sleep regression is to just let them fuss it out. Because really, like, when you're 9-month-old or 18-month-old or 2-year-old, all the times when the regressions hit and they start crying in the middle of the night, if you get them up, you're just teaching them that if I cry, I get to get up. And then by getting them up, you are just letting them like get more tired, which makes them more fussy, which makes them overly tired, and then they can't sleep. So what we've always done is with a sleep regression, they start crying, we'll go in, we'll lay them back down, pat them, walk out, let them cry. Whatever time you feel comfortable letting them cry. It might be 3 minutes, it might be 5 minutes, it might be 10 minutes, whatever. Go back in, lay them back down, pat them, don't pick them up, walk back out. So I will say with sleep training, I guess, if we want to call it that, the biggest key is just consistency, no matter what the circumstances are. Like, you want your child to feel loved, obviously, and they are loved. You're teaching them to sleep. Sleep is important. Sleep is healthy. Sleep is needed to keep their body healthy. So you're loving them, like, even if you're training them to sleep on their own. So just stay consistent. Hold them when you need to. If they're sick, whatever, do whatever you need to do with that, obviously. But then once they feel better, get them back into their routine. Sleep regressions. Keep with the consistency, keep with the routine. Don't give in or change their routine. And then after maybe like 3 nights, they're back to normal. So sleep regressions, I've found that if I stop being consistent and I like pull them into my bed or I get up with them or whatever, it stretches out the sleep regression for like weeks. Whereas if you're just consistent, it only lasts a few days. Like honestly, it's just a much faster process. So consistency. With all things sleep related, consistency. Consistent bedtime, consistent afternoon nap time, consistent eat, wake, sleep with like little bitty babies, consistent morning nap, etc. Just consistency. That way your kids and you know what to expect. So I will say with like nap time is my guarded 2 hours, I guess, in my family. Like I don't make appointments during that time. I don't commit to anything during that time. We try to do all of our like morning activities with enough time to get back for nap time because it's needed. Like there are very, very, very few occasions where we will skip nap time, like very few. So just guard that time, like guard those hours and just implement it every day and your kids will nap. They will, or they will have quiet time. It just has to be consistent. I don't know, it has to be consistent, and I mean, it has to be important to you, I guess, but sleep is important and kids do need rest, and sleep is key. It just is. And I will say that doing all of those things, like teaching them how as young little babies to lay down on their own, really just helps with them like being comfortable in their own room and being comfortable sleeping on their own. It helps when you have like sitters. It helps when you have family members that are going to like babysit your kids overnight. It just helps with everything because you know that your kids have a routine and they know how to fall asleep on their own, and it's just not as difficult for anyone. So that, I mean, having 5 kids, we like to have a date night, you know, like once a month if we can, and sometimes that's overnight. And for my mother-in-law, I know it helps that my kids have a consistent schedule of sleep. So scheduling, yeah, some people hate the word scheduling with little kids, but honestly, like kids thrive on schedule. They just do. They seriously thrive on it. And if you consistently implement it, like it just makes it makes your day so much easier. Like I have very few parenting days. I do have them sometimes, but I have very few where I just feel like completely overwhelmed, completely like I want to pull my hair out all day long. Like if we're having a hard morning, I know that nap time's coming, and nap time is a reset that's going to help us with our afternoon. And I mentally know that if my 2-year-old is playing in his room during nap time and not sleeping, I kind of mentally know that the evening's gonna be a little bit harder. So it's kind of just, I don't know, it just helps me like know what to expect in my day and kind of like plan my day. And bedtime, it's the same thing. Bedtime is consistent. So bedtime routine is key, and you can implement that from the time they're teeny tiny babies. Some little bitty babies like need to go to bed earlier than others. I will say that my oldest, we could keep him up as an itty bitty infant way later than we could like my second, my little girl. She was my fussiest newborn, and she did have a little bit of reflux, but what we realized was she needed to go to bed earlier. And once we figured that out, she was so much easier. So I think that's just kind of like evaluating your child. Like you know your child better than anybody. So if you see that they're consistently getting really, really, really upset around like 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, like start the bedtime process earlier. Sometimes that included a bath at night. Sometimes that just included like lotion and new jammies, a new diaper, white noise. We've always used a sound machine. Swaddles for little babies. So like what I would do, I guess, with like my tiny baby, if it was bath night, I would give a bath, a little bit of lotion, diaper, new jammies, swaddle, take them into their room, turn off the lights, white noise, nurse them, and put them to bed. So with like bedtime for babies, definitely feed them right before bed. Don't worry about the eat, wake, sleep. Like you want to feed them. Because sometimes babies need a cluster feed. Sometimes babies just need more calories, especially if you want them to sleep longer. So you always feed right before bed for bedtime routine. And then for toddlers and up, I would say it's kind of the same thing. Bath, teeth, book, whatever your schedule is, just be consistent. Every night, my younger kids go to bed at 7:30. Every night. Sometimes 8, but it's always like right around there. Unless we're like out and about, whatever. I'm not like completely strict to the point where if a friend invites us to something, I'm like, oh, we have to get back by 7 o'clock. My kids are well-rounded enough to handle it a little bit longer. And I might have given them like a longer nap or something earlier in the day to prepare for that. But if we're at home, they go to bed by 7:38. No ifs, ands, or buts, that's just what we do. You have bath, you brush your teeth, get jammies on, we read our book, and you go to bed. So we lay them down, we say their prayers, we turn out their lights, and we leave. And there is a brief period in time when kids will come out of their room and try to like push those limits. You have to be consistent. Take them back to their room. Don't feed into it. Don't get them extra water. Don't get them extra whatever it is that they want. Just say, it's bedtime. Lay them back down, cover them back up, walk out. If they come out again, lay them back down, process, repeat. Some people discipline in that, some people don't. I've found that like disciplining in that doesn't necessarily work as much as just being consistent does. But that's just what we do. And then they consistently like wake up at the same time every day. In my house, you don't get up before like 7 a.m. Like there's no reason for it. So if one of my kids wakes up way early, I just lay them back down and tell them it's not time to get up yet. If the baby wakes up super early, I might go in there and nurse him and just lay him back down, or I might just let him fuss for a few minutes and then he goes back to sleep. So we don't start our day earlier than like 7:30 usually, and that works with 5 kids. My older kids don't get on the bus till 8:30, so we have enough time to get ready in the morning. But it's just, if I could give you any piece of advice, like I said, it's just figure out what schedule you want to work with your family, like what works for your child, and be consistent. Consistency is key when it comes to sleep. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I don't want to come across, like I said, like I know it all, because I don't. All I can do is speak from our personal experience. Like I said, I had 5 children, but that doesn't mean I have it all figured out. But that is kind of what I've learned in these 9 years of parenting. And I personally have loved the baby phase. I have loved the toddler phase. I've loved it all, but there's definitely hard parts in all of it. But sleeping was just like the #1 thing that needed to be figured out in my house for us all to just like stay sane and enjoy each other. So I hope you all like this. I hope that it's helpful in some way. I hope that you can take at least like one piece of advice from this and implement it into your family, and that it makes a huge difference for you. And if you're like a new mom and you're really struggling right now with sleep, I've been there and I understand, and I pray that it gets easier for you. Just stand firm, stay the course, figure out your schedule, and stay consistent. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so.